Lights, camera, in action. Hello BookTube, Ali here. This is the Filmtastic February Tag, so while it's still February, I thought I would try and get this one done. It was created by Duncan from Back Away from the Donkey, which I have to say is an excellent channel name. Nice one, Duncan. I was tagged by Pat from Book Chat with Pat, and this is a sort of tie-in tag for a reading event called Filmtastic February, where people are encouraged to read film-related books. I haven't consciously taken part in the reading event, but since I was tagged and since I am a bit of a film nerd as well as a book geek, I was keen to take part in this tag. And I suppose I technically have taken part in Filmtastic February in a way, but more on that later. So all of these prompts are related to film, mostly also related to books in one way or another, although the first question is purely a film question, and that is your first memory of seeing a film at the pictures or cinema. And for me, my first memory of seeing a film at the pictures was Sister Act. That came out in 1992, so I would have been 6 at the time. And I remember my parents taking me to see it at our local cinema, which no longer exists. But I remember it was up a flight of stairs, and we actually had to queue on the stairs to get in. This was when I was 6. I could stand up a little bit at least, so that was doable at the time. But yes, my main abiding memory of the film was there's a scene where Whoopi Goldberg's character is being chased by 2 mobsters, and I seem to remember at one point she punches them both in the groin, and my 6-year-old self was quite scandalized by that, and in the cinema I turned to my parents and said, "Is this suitable for me?" The second prompt is a book about film. It can be behind the scenes, an autobiography, a work of fiction that includes film as a main subject. I have a couple of options here for non-fiction film-related books. So my first pick is The Great Movies by Roger Ebert. This is a series of essays covering 100 classic, significant films that Roger Ebert considered to be great movies. And I think it was around my late teens or early 20s when I first started seriously getting into classic film. I had seen like a handful of older films, like I know I'd seen stuff like Psycho and like Singing in the Rain I saw when I was very young, but it wasn't something that I'd really seriously explored. But then around my late teens, I saw The Maltese Falcon, the classic film noir, hard-boiled detective film starring Humphrey Bogart, and that set me off on a long path of discovering all kinds of other classic films. And this book by Roger Ebert, and Roger Ebert's website as well, was invaluable for just guiding me through what was really worth seeing and what would most appeal to me. There are certain films and directors discussed in these essays that this is where I discovered them, and yeah, through that I found some amazing films that have remained favourites ever since I saw them. So if you're looking to get into kind of classic films, and not just American classics, but there's classics from all over the world in this book. It's a really helpful resource. I really like Roger Ebert's writing style, and even if I don't necessarily agree with him on his assessment of each film, I see where he's coming from, and yeah, this is a really good resource for getting into classic film. Now, another really interesting non-fiction book on film that I have is Making Movies by Sidney Lumet. Sidney Lumet is or was a great American director. His first film was 12 Angry Men, which is still one of the best films anyone has ever made. So the fact that was his first film is kind of mind-boggling to me. He also directed other great films like Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, a lot of great stuff. And this book, Making Movies, is a step-by-step account on how movies are made. It was published in 1995, so the information is, I guess, somewhat outdated now, but I learned a lot from this book. It's really interesting. I like the way he writes, and he shares examples from his own career of all the aspects of filmmaking that he's discussing, but he avoids gossip, really. So if you want to know, what was Marlon Brando or Henry Fonda really like, you're not going to find that out from this book. This is very much a kind of practical walkthrough on the filmmaking process, every step of the way, right from conception and writing to shooting and editing, and then even like marketing and release. So yeah, if you want a really kind of in-depth account of what the filmmaking process is like, or at least what it was like back then, from someone who really knows and who made some like genuinely classic, brilliant films, then yeah, this is a really, really interesting read. The third prompt is a novelization or tie-in book. I don't really have a good answer for this one. I don't know, maybe this is kind of snobby of me, but I tend to avoid film tie-in editions of books. I love films and I love books, but I don't want a copy of a book that has an actor's face on the cover. In Bookland, that is not the character. That's like a film version of the character. I don't want that on my book. So yeah, I tend to avoid those, and I don't really read novelizations either. I know that some people get a lot of enjoyment out of them, and maybe I should get over myself and try some. But I think the only novelizations I've really read are TV novelizations of Doctor Who serials. And those are okay, I guess. But I mean, honestly, yeah, I've found that if the source material is a film or a TV episode, I'd rather stick to that rather than a novelization. I don't mind it in the other direction, but yeah, I don't really get the appeal. The fourth prompt is a film about writers or writing. Now, I was tagged by Pat a couple of weeks ago on this, and I made my notes then. So it was with a mixture of delight and slight annoyance that when I watched Gareth from Books, Songs, and Other Magic answering the same prompts, he picked the exact same films that I was going to, and those are Barton Fink and Almost Famous. I actually rewatched Almost Famous just this month, and it's been one of my favourites since I first saw it. I guess not long after it came out. I didn't see it in the cinema, but I definitely saw it on DVD not long afterwards. I particularly like the extended director's cut, the untitled cut, I think it's called. But yeah, that Almost Famous is not only a lovely film about writing and a writer, but also a lovely celebration of the power of music. It's about a teenager in the 70s who gets a job writing a profile of a rock band for Rolling Stone magazine, and he ends up going on tour with them and having a sort of coming of age journey. It's a wonderful and beautiful tribute to music and what makes people love it. And yeah, it stars a writer. And then Barton Fink is a Coen Brothers movie from 91, I think, starring John Turturro as the titular Barton Fink, who is a New York playwright who has been invited over to Hollywood to write a film in the 1930s, I think. And it's all about kind of writer's block. Apparently, the Coen brothers wrote it while they themselves were struggling with writer's block, trying to finish the script for Miller's Crossing, their previous film. And yeah, it's a really, really weird, disorienting film. I think it's brilliant. I had to watch it a couple of times to kind of figure out how I felt about it, but I quite like stuff like that. So, yeah, I definitely would recommend that as well if you like your films a little bit weird. Yeah, also, John Goodman is brilliant in that film as well. A really memorable supporting role. Yeah, highly recommend that. The fifth question is a film that brings back fond memories. I have a couple of fond memories of specifically going to the cinema. So I think one of my favourite ever cinema going experiences was when I went to see a screening of The General, the Buster Keaton film from 1926. So it's turning 100 this year. Yeah, happy birthday, Buster. But being a silent film, I got to see it with live musical accompaniment, a pianist and a drummer, and they were both fantastic. They were really perfectly in sync with the film, and they could provide kind of musical sound effects, as it were, to make the film come alive. And I was already a fan of that film, but to see it with live music and with an audience was just a fantastic and quite emotional experience. Being in the room with a crowd of people laughing and cheering and gasping at Buster Keaton's daring stunts and brilliant jokes. when the film was well coming up for 100 years old. Yeah, it was a really special moment, and yeah, definitely one of my favorite cinema going experiences. Another film I have really fond memories of, if you can believe it, is No Country for Old Men. I went to see that at the cinema when it came out. I was already a big Coen Brothers fan at the time, and I was really excited to see that film because it looked like it was going to be really good. And lo and behold, it was. But I needed a lift to the cinema, and so my mum took me, and she came in to see the film too. And I was a little bit worried about that, just because I thought the film might be a bit too violent and grim and maybe too sweary for her taste. So I warned her beforehand. I said, I'm not sure if you're going to really enjoy this. Now, during the film, I was completely like engrossed in it, so I didn't like check up on Mum while we were watching. But then once it ended, my thoughts turned to her again, and as I prepared to kind of apologize for putting her through the experience of that film, she turned to me as the lights went up, and the first thing she said was, "That was fabulous." Yeah, you never can tell. And one more silly anecdote about going to the cinema. In fact, the same cinema, and also with Mum. One Christmas time, we went to see It's a Wonderful Life. I had seen it on the listings on the website at the cinema, and we both loved that film, so we went along. What I didn't realise before we arrived is that the screening was supposed to be for old age pensioners only. So when we arrived, the whole place was swarming with silver haired old folks. And thankfully, the cinema staff, accepted that it was a mistake, and they let us come in anyway, which meant that we got to see It's a Wonderful Life for the princely sum of £1 with free mince pies and tea and coffee. And yeah, I was the youngest person in the cinema by a good 40 years. The sixth question is a film that made you want to read the book. Well, I've read quite a few books because I'd seen the film. I think most recently I read The Night of the Hunter, which the film version is one of my favourites. It's kind of a cult classic from 1955. It's the only film directed by Charles Laughton, who was better known as an actor at the time. And it was such a flop when it was released that he was discouraged from ever even attempting to direct another film, which is a great shame because actually it's an incredible film. It's quite surreal and dreamlike and quite scary, almost nightmarish. It's about two children who are being chased by a serial killer who disguises himself as a priest, and he has knuckle tattoos that spell out love on one hand and hate on the other. I think I probably first saw it because I was aware that one of my favourite bands, Cardiacs, had quoted some of the dialogue from the film in their lyrics, especially quite a few songs on their 1999 album Guns, especially the song Wind and Rains is Cold, which features a chorus that quotes the line about like her hair waving all lazy and soft like meadow grass under floodwater. They slightly paraphrase it to make it fit the tune, but yeah, it's that line. And yeah, references to like a hate hand and yeah, various other quotes from the film that's peppered through the lyrics of that album. So yeah, I saw the film, and finally last year I actually read the book that it's based on, and was surprised and delighted to find just how accurate an adaptation the film was, and how the film really captures the kind of dreamlike, creepy atmosphere of the writing. So yeah, if like me, you've only seen the film and haven't read the book, then I would definitely recommend, yeah, reading the book. The seventh question is a book that made you want to watch the film. Now, Pat, who tagged me, her answer for the previous question of a film that made her want to read the book was To Kill a Mockingbird. And that's going to be my answer for this question. We did this the other way around. I read the book first and then saw the film. And again, I think the film is a really wonderful encapsulation of the book. It really works. And the scene where Scout meets Boo Radley face to face and says those words, "Hey Boo," the way she says it in the film is exactly how I'd heard it in my head when I read the book. And yeah, it really got to me, as you might be able to tell. Question 8.5 is films based on a book or story that bear no resemblance to the source. Well, just this month I was reading one of those very books, and that is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, which was turned into Blade Runner. Now, I first saw Blade Runner in my teens at some point. Early teens, definitely. And I loved it. I was absolutely besotted with that film. I watched it repeatedly. I think I watched all of the various different cuts of it as well, because there are multiple different versions of it. And not long after I saw it, I also read the book, and then I didn't reread it until just last week. And I had completely forgotten just how different it is from the film. And not in a bad way, really. I think Blade Runner is a brilliant film. It's very much its own thing. I mean, the central premise is there of a bounty hunter searching for escaped androids and retiring them. But there's so much more in the book that just isn't in the film. There's extra characters. Some of the characters that are in the film have different names. And yeah, there's all these other concepts that are all kind of exploring the central theme of like what's real and what's artificial, what's fake, and if the fake is convincing enough, does that matter anymore? So I think both the film and the book are exploring that topic, but the book really explores it in more depth, and just has a lot more stuffed into it. I really enjoyed reading it. It's been I think, one of my most rewarding reading experiences of the year so far. And yeah, I definitely want to rewatch Blade Runner and the sequel as well at some point. Now that I've had my memory refreshed as to the actual plot of the source material. But yeah, they're pretty different. Question 9.5 weeks is to recommend 5 films. Now, if all goes to plan, in a couple of weeks I will be doing something which involves sharing some of my all-time favourite films. So my recommendations in this video here are going to focus on films that I have seen for the first time fairly recently, like in the last year and a half or so. So these may well become favourite films for me, but at this point I can't confidently say that they are, because I tend to need to rewatch films to be really sure about how I feel about them. But my first recommendation is Perfect Days. This is a film from 2023. It's directed by Wim Wenders, who is a German director, but this is a film set in Japan and in Japanese. It stars Koji Yakusho as a man who we basically follow him going around his daily life, his daily routine. He gets up, he tends to his bonsai trees, he drives to work and listens to music on cassettes in the car on the way there and the way back, and he works cleaning public toilets. And we basically follow his day repeatedly, and gradually build a picture of who he is and get some clues as to why he is the way he is. It's a very meditative film, very slow, very quiet. I think Koji Yakusho is just incredible in the role. He kept me completely hooked when he wasn't really doing much. I mean, his character wasn't doing much. Just, cleaning toilets, snipping, pruning bonsai trees, stuff like that. And, occasionally having conversations which give you some hint as to his internal life. It's definitely a film that I can imagine some people might find quite boring, but I found it absolutely beautiful. And the final scene, which is set to Feeling Good by Nina Simone, had me weeping. It's an absolutely fantastic, beautiful, wonderful film, and I highly recommend it. My second recommendation is a much more dialogue-heavy film, and that is The Lion in Winter. This is a historical drama starring Peter O'Toole as Henry II, I think. I should probably go and check that, but I'm in the middle of recording now. But yes, Peter O'Toole as, I think, Henry II, and Catherine Hepburn as Eleanor of Aquitaine. And it's all about their really messed up relationship and yeah, all of the messed up family dynamics. It's the dialogue is just so good, so memorable. I think one of my favourite lines is when he barks at her, "I'm vilifying you, for God's sake, pay attention." It's it's yeah, great, great film that I thoroughly enjoyed, and yeah, highly recommend. Next, I'm going to say Late Spring. This is 1949 drama by Yasujiro Ozu. It's another Japanese language film. This one by a Japanese director. I've recently got really into Ozu, and basically the way I've just described Perfect Days, it's very clear to me that it was a film heavily influenced by Ozu. Ozu's films tend to be very quiet and slow and meditative, but also the the connections between characters, the dynamic between characters, the relationships are very rich and complex, and he's saying a lot about his culture at the time. So Late Spring stars Setsuko Hara as a woman called Noriko, and she lives with her widowed father, and all of her family and friends are encouraging her to marry, to allow them to arrange marriage for her, and she is really reluctant to do so because she doesn't want to leave her dad alone at home. And so her dad starts looking for a match for himself so that she will agree to also get married. It's a very, very beautiful, bittersweet film. I won't go into any spoilers about what happens towards the end, but the final scene, really kind of ties it all together, and it's a very gentle but very emotional experience. I've watched a lot of Ozu films in the past 8 or 9 months, and I've loved nearly all of them, and even the ones that I didn't love, I still really, really liked. So I think it's safe to say Ozu is becoming one of my favourite filmmakers, and I think Late Spring is a beautiful example of his work. Another Japanese director, although one who's relatively new to me, and that is Kenji Mizoguchi, and his film from 1953, Yugetsu. I've spoken about this on one of my wrap-up videos. It was my film of that month. Was it December? I think it was. But yeah, it's a fantastic film. It's about two couples, and how in each case the men in those couples, they let their ambition and possibly greed or hubris lead them in ways that bring disaster on them, but even more so bring disaster on their wives. It's a very dramatic film, very creepy and atmospheric. The story takes some ghostly turns, and yeah, I thought it was utterly, utterly gripping. And I think Mizoguchi is almost kind of the flip side of Ozu. His films are much more fluid and dynamic. There's a lot more camera motion, and the actors are acting with their whole bodies and not just faces and voices, as tends to be the case in Ozu films. It's, I guess, less realism and more kind of, I don't know, sort of operatic, or maybe like kabuki theatre. But yeah, if you like films that kind of play you like a piano, if you like a Hitchcock film, then Mizoguchi is kind of a Japanese equivalent of that. Not so much the kind of suspense thriller type aspect, but just the kind of the dynamism of the direction. I thought it was a fantastic film. And my final pick is one that I watched last month, and that is The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, directed by Jacques Demy, from 1964, which is a French musical. And kind of like an opera, it's sung through. There is no spoken dialogue at all. It's, all of the words are sung. At first, I wasn't sure if I was into it, but by the end, I was fully sold. It's a romance, a kind of a sad romance between two young lovers. One of them played by Catherine Deneuve. I can't remember the name of the lead actor now, but yeah, it starts with them kind of head over heels in love and imagining their future together, but circumstances kind of drag them apart. And yeah, I won't say any more than that, but the final scene, that's when it all came together for me, and by the end I was bawling. So yeah, just to warn you. But yeah, I thought it was a wonderful film. Also, if, like me, you are a Futurama fan, then you may recognize one of the songs from an episode of Futurama, specifically the one with Fry's dog. If you're a fan, you know the one I mean, the heartbreaking one. But yes, that song at the end of that episode is an English translation of a song from The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. So, yeah, I was also, thinking about Fry's dog while I was watching it, but not too much. I was mostly just, into the film. And finally, question 10 is not a question at all, but a prompt to tag other people. I will do so in the description down below. I'll keep it to just a handful for this one. I did recently post my own tag video, my very first tag video, and I tagged a whole load of people in that, so I won't add to too many people's backlog with this one. But yeah, if you're watching this and you'd like to take part, then I encourage you to do so, and let me know in your tags if you do so, because I'm always interested to see what other people say. Anyway, that's about it from me today. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to leave a comment, maybe let me know any of your answers to any of these prompts, or any other film-related nonsense that you're thinking of at the moment. Whatever it is, I'm always happy to hear from you. Anyway, that is about it for me today, so I hope you're having a lovely day, and I will see you when I see you.